The chairman of the ECB, Richard Thompson, is here, and welcome, Richard.
Thank you, Aggers.
Thanks for coming to see us.
No, fantastic. My first time in Pakistan, an absolutely wonderful trip. First time in, 17 years we've been back. But the atmosphere here, everything about this test is so special. And, what this clearly means to Pakistan as a nation, and not having been back here for 17 years, you can see the impact that we're having.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, the welcome has been really profound, actually.
Absolutely, yeah. Humbling.
Yeah.
Quite emotional.
Well, I've only got 15 minutes with you, so we better rattle through.
It's always a long 15 minutes.
It'll seem like a lifetime. I promise you it won't. Let's start with this is the general health of English cricket, I suppose, as you move into this position now. Well, how do you think that lies?
Well, I think I'm very fortunate to have inherited a resurgent England side, both in red and white ball cricket. Obviously, just winning the T20 World Cup was just extraordinary. Considering the depth of the players that weren't playing in that final, I think put into perspective what we achieved, and the brand of cricket that Stokes and Baz have brought to the Test side, having come through the summer and just reinvented Test cricket, redefined Test cricket, and then this match, 6 and over, records being broken everywhere. It was the first time that 4 people have got a century. So I think I look at the player pathway, I look at what the quality of cricketers that are coming through the system, and it feels to me that this is the strongest for a generation. In both forms of the game, particularly white ball, and you can sense now with the type of cricket we're trying to play in red ball cricket, that going into the Ashes next year, the anticipation of that, Australia clearly the #1 red ball nation. If we win that, we're likely to be the best Test playing nation and the holders of both World Cups. That could be an extraordinary moment in 12 months' time. So who knows? So I think cricket, on the field is in a very strong place.
So I'm bound to ask then, given it's caused a bit of a stir out there, a bit of a hornet's nest, is the Strauss review necessary?
Well, I think the Strauss review was obviously called at a time only 12 months ago, less than 12 months ago, when obviously we had a very challenging Ashes. And I think there's almost kind of it's written in tablets of stone at Lord's, isn't it? If we have a bad Ashes, we need a review. So clearly we needed a review.
But most of them gather dust on a shelf somewhere. Will this one?
Well, Ken Schofield's one, I think, was one that really created more change with central contracts and other things. I think this one is about sustaining success as much as anything. And you can't take for granted the fact that, okay, we are currently playing a very exciting brand of cricket, we're doing great, but how can you sustain that? How can you ensure that this isn't just a flash in the pan? And one thing that I think anyone that follows cricket at a domestic level will know, that the schedule that we have is very, very challenging, stroke unworkable. I mean, that was agreed by players, members, pretty much, certainly the county chairs, that the schedule is the one issue that causes the most tension, and we have to find a way of doing something about the schedule to ensure that all formats can breathe around a very congested international programme.
Yes, so in a way, I might not put words into your mouth, but England's success is kind of irrelevant to what happens beneath it, as far as the Strauss is concerned, in that it's that platform beneath it to produce the England players of the future that this is really addressing, do you think?
Well, I think the review was focusing, its main objective was within 5 years English cricket should be the #1 in all forms. So that was the reason that the high performance review was created. That actually may happen sooner now. It's sustaining it, and I think it's sustaining it as the tectonic plates of global cricket change, where players now are facing extraordinary decisions on whether they sign a central contract for England or they sign a central contract for one owner of 4 franchises, and they choose to follow the sun. So in that sense, that's an existential threat to the game. We as the ECB, our key asset are the players and the player pathway. We have to guard that very carefully and ensure that we don't lose control of our key assets, i.e. the players, as their options and choices of what to do with their careers are now changing rapidly, and the money available to these players is now life-changing.
Yes, but all these franchises available, and only a certain number of places in an England team, for instance, are available. The players are bound to be drawn away.
Well, yeah, this is why kind of Ben Ben Stokes is so important here as well, where he still wants to play as much as he possibly can, and he knows, as any player knows, winning an Ashes is so important, and that's where you leave a legacy. That's where you leave your mark, and it would be dreadful if players decide that they would rather not play for their country and rather play for a series of franchises around the world. That's a threat. It's not imminent, but it's there, and it's something that we have to understand to ensure that players aren't put in that position.
Yeah. How much of the Strauss do you think will happen? I mean, the counties, certainly ones I've spoken to, seem to be quite negatively opposed to it at the moment.
Well, 15 of the 17 points have happened. So I think we should not lose sight of what actually has come out of the review, in the sense of how we're playing lines cricket, ball tracking, point systems, pitches, lots of things that will really improve the standard and quality of cricket.
But the Championship, though? But
the Championship, yeah. You know, what Andrew was asked to do was to produce a high-performance review. He's done that. And he felt, based on evidence and advice, that 10 games would be the optimum number of Championship games. A lot of people disagree with that, but he was asked to produce a report. He's done that, and that is a high performance review through the lens of high performance. But beyond that, the volume of cricket that we play at domestic level is not the ECB's decision, that's the counties' decision, and the counties have pushed against that. The counties have seen the volume of international, or the volume of domestic cricket over the last 5 years go from 16 to 14, and 10 is probably a bridge too far for them. And as I've said already, we need to find a compromise that still creates a high performance environment but still gives members, fans and counties as much red ball cricket as we can play. Yeah. And red ball cricket's crucial. I'm a fan of the Championship as much as anything, and having seen the intensity of games play out in the last year, Championship cricket in Division 1 is of a very high standard.
How happy are you, Richard, with the schedule that you've inherited?
It is what it is, and I wouldn't have stood for the role if I felt that it was totally and absolutely unworkable. And I think my role now is to try with Richard Gould, the incoming CEO, and some brilliant colleagues at the ECB and the county chairs, is to make it a schedule that does make some sense. But at the moment, it doesn't work.
But August blocked off for the 100. Are you a supporter of that?
There's no way we can have the situation that we had last year where we play no red ball in August. That can't happen.
So that has to change.
That has to change. And the 100 is blamed for a lot of things, but actually the 100 doesn't have to be played through the whole of August. There can be a window for red ball cricket in August, and there has to be a window for
Test cricket as well.
I hope so. I mean, again, that's the Jenga game that we're trying to play, but the reality is August is a crucial month. It's also the month that the Premier League comes back. We need to compete with that, but we need to produce world-class spinners. You're not going to win Test matches in Pakistan without world-class spinners. Yeah. But you're not going to be doing that if you're not playing in pitches in August.
Both you and Richard Gould obviously famously opposed the 100. There was an Alice Capsey moment for you, a light bulb moment. That was the women's game. It's the men's 100 really that's causing the debate. Would you not agree? In that scheduling more white ball cricket than necessary, it's done a lot for women's cricket. No one could deny that. But it's the men's game that's being impacted.
Look, the 100 has brought a lot of good to the game, but it's created an awful lot of tension. And we're only 2 years in. We almost talk about this tournament like it's been around for 10, but it's only 2 years in. And clearly playing the double headers with the women, having those matches on terrestrial free-to-view made a huge difference for women's cricket. And it was a seminal moment that we need to build on. The sense is we can play the 100 potentially in a shorter window. It doesn't have to be in August. We can look at it in a way that we can build around it and ensure that other forms, other parts of the domestic structure and international structure don't have to be so subservient to the 100. They can coexist together, but it's difficult, and it's that's a challenge that we've got to face up to and understand that we are where we are. The reality of the 100 has certainly created that tension, but at the same time we've seen an audience of individuals that were not coming to the blast, and that's extraordinary. Very hard in the UK to find new sporting audiences within 2 years, and the 100's done that. And through a combination of those things, that's evidence, and I can't ignore that is the evidence that we now are looking at, which is positive.
Got 5 minutes to go.
Right, okay.
Azim Rafiq and the races of inquiry. Are you happy with how this has been handled so far?
As far as Azim Rafiq's concerned, that we can't discuss that on the basis that we are in the middle of the process is playing out. That process sits with the CDC, not the ECB. The CDC sits aside from the ECB, and the point is, when something is an investigation that is now going to full inquiry and trial, it would be wrong of me to say anything about that.
Okay. Is that convenient? I mean, the reason I ask that is but it's going to reflect on the ECB. Whatever the CDC decides and any action that it takes against whoever, that is going to reflect on the ECB and the English game.
And I think we have that conversation when it's over. And we can reflect on it when it's over, and we can also reflect on it when the ICEC report comes in January, because that will also be a very challenging time for the game. It will hold a mirror up to the game.
Can you explain to listeners what that is?
So the ICEC report was a report that was called after the killing of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter. So this was 2 years ago, that the game took absolutely the ECB took a decision to feel that it needs to explore inequality in cricket, whether there was racism, discrimination, and that's what a completely independent commission into equality into cricket has done, and that's been a piece of work that no other sport has ever embarked on before. I think it would have been finished earlier if it wasn't for what happened a year ago with the allegations around Rafiq that then took it to another realm. And we now have the report that will furnish in January, and at that point the game can then decide what it does with the information that the ICEC will put in front of us, and it will be challenging, but it will be a moment that the game can really start to rebuild trust. And I hope move on, but learn from that report.
And January, therefore, could be a powder keg month, because that is when the Rafiq cases are going to be heard now, I understand. And there's that report as well. Are you bracing yourselves for that?
It's going to be challenging, but we've got to be ready for that. And, you know, the reason that I took on this role was I believe that cricket can be the country's most inclusive sport. I truly, truly believe that can be the case, and I think we've got to use the ICEC report to enable that to happen. We've got to learn. There's going to be a period of truth and reconciliation, because this is an open sore in the game that has to heal, and as much as people are going through a very challenging process, we need to get past this point, and people need to be able to see that you are welcome in this game. You should be included in this game. Everyone is welcome to play cricket. No one should be excluded. Last
one. Just as we flew out, there was a story that was floated about an offer of 400 million for the 100. Is that true? And is that a potential future for the 100 to be franchise based?
Well, it is franchise-based in that sense, but the
ECB would say that it isn't, though.
Well, it's a franchise-based tournament owned by the reality of the 100 is that it's created an awful lot of interest in the private equity markets. There is a feeding frenzy around world cricket and private equity at the moment. I'm not surprised we've had an offer. It's an unsolicited offer. I'm not going to comment on how much.
We have had the offer.
We have had an offer, but I'm not going to be drawn on what that offer is. But again, that does show the interest that the 100 is generating, the English cricket is generating, not just the 100. So I think from that perspective, I would expect more unsolicited offers as well.
Is it worth 400 million?
Well, the Lucknow Super Giants, what was the Lucknow Super Giants? I mean, so the latest IPL franchise sold for $1 billion. That was one team. So I would say the tournament's worth a lot more.
On that word, Richard, thanks for coming in, and good luck. There's a lot on your plate, and thanks for sparing 15 minutes. It's flown by.
It has. Always does, Aggers.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in to talk to us. There we are, Richard Thompson, the income chairman of the ECB.